So today I'm heading to Cambodia, more specifically Siem Reap, to do what I always do when I get to a new place that I've not been before, try to become the ultimate tourist. To start with, I'll show you the hotel, or Airbnb in this case, which cost me $12 a night, which, considering the location, next to the river in the heart of Siem Reap, not bad. But now it's time to venture out into the 45-degree heat to look at some temples, of course. The first one being the biggest in Siem Reap, nearly 100 years old, which nowadays is the centre of study, with a primary school for children located on the grounds, which really puts the primary school I went to as a kid to shame. I mean, the chances of being inspired here has got to be a lot higher than the classic British concrete boring buildings that I had growing up, as well as at least there's some relevant history here, which I think is pretty cool anyway. Then on to the next temple, which wasn't too far away, just on the other side of the river. This site has history dating back to the 16th century, with many statues within the walls. And then after walking even further to the final temple on today's agenda is also one of the oldest known Buddhist temples in Siem Reap, which again, the grounds here, there's a small school here, some living quarters for the monk, beautiful gardens, and some very nice places just to sit down and relax. So after doing exactly just that, I headed back towards the river again, crossing over the Old Market Bridge, which, would you believe, leads you straight to the Old Market itself. I know. Mind-blowing stuff. The Old Market is the most popular local market for tourists, locals, expats, and everyone else in between. And it's in the heart of the tourist centre of Siem Reap, located between the famous Pub Street and the Siem Reap River. Now on to my second day in Siem Reap, this time with no temples on the immediate plan, so I can go back to my sleeveless outfits, which provides me with much needed airflow to not drop with sweat every step I take. Because here's me thinking as a British man I was handling the weather pretty well in Southeast Asia, but the reality is I was clearly just relying off the wind coming off the sea in Pattaya, and well, there's not much wind really coming off the river here, so I'm feeling it now more than ever. That's for sure. Then after walking for over an hour, I got to the royal residence that serves as an official residence for the King of Cambodia whenever he visits Siem Reap. And just across from the royal residence there's a temple, and just to the side of that there's the Royal Independence Gardens themselves. And something to note, I will say, the drivers here in Southeast Asia are normally pretty crazy. Here it's the first for me where they actually stop for you to allow you to cross the road, and also unlike Vietnam, which they love to honk their horn every chance they get, I don't think I've heard a single horn since I've been here yet. Maybe that's because they think it's rude, I'm not too sure. And to finish the day off, I finally visited the famous Pub Street, which is officially titled Street 8. The street itself is a 100-metre stretch of road filled with clubs, bars, restaurants, food vendors, and obviously many party street degenerate tourists, like myself in this case. So we'll wrap day 2 up right there. Now on to my third day. And I think it's worth mentioning the people here so far are super friendly, the locals' English is pretty good, and even more so when you try to attempt to speak their language, even if it's just a couple words or a sentence or two, it really goes a long way. But again, maybe that's because it's a bigger city and it's getting more and more popular with expats and tourists, so I'll have to see if that changes when I go to a more rural area later on this Cambodian trip. Then after walking a fair distance again, I came across Cambodian-Vietnamize War Memorial Park, which honours the Vietnamese soldiers who died while freeing Cambodia from the Khmer Rouge in 1979. Not as in a war between the Cambodia and Vietnam, as in a combined war from the Vietnamese and Cambodian soldiers against Pol Pot, which, if you haven't heard of that name before, you might want to do a bit of googling to learn a bit more about that dictator who ruled Cambodia for 4 years between 1975 and 1979, because it's a pretty brutal part of history here. I mean, he caused the deaths of nearly 2 million of his own people, but not to get too dark, I'll save that piece of history for another video perhaps. Then after wandering around Siem Reap a bit more, I got back to my hotel and decided to do a little walkabout since the weather had changed and it was very windy, which is a bonus for me, as that makes a change from the 40+ degree weather with no wind, which I've had every day so far here. I ended up stumbling across another temple on my travels, but since I didn't plan on this, I wasn't wearing a top with sleeves, which is obviously kind of the rules here in most of Southeast Asia. So because I'm a super respectful guy, I only took video from the outside. And I did have more planned to go see a certain viewpoint, for example, but with the weather looking like it's slowly turning bad, I figured I'd save that for another day. And now on to the fourth day of my travels here in Siem Reap, this time taking a tuk-tuk to the Angkor Botanical Garden, which is a 15-hectare site that's also Cambodia's first botanical garden, which features local traditional medicinal plants and spices, as well as flowers, a palm garden, Khmer-inspired garden, and an Angkor forest garden. Plus there's also an area for turtles, peacocks, wild chickens, and a hell of a lot of fish. And it's free to enter as well, all you have to do is follow one of their social media sites, which is pretty good as well. Then I upgraded from a tuk-tuk to what I can only describe as a modern-day Roman chariot, with a bike instead of a horse of course. And I took this towards the Siem Reap River, which leads into the biggest lake in Cambodia. But downside of travelling alone when it comes to doing certain activities, like taking a boat out into the lake to see a floating village maybe, you need to fill all 4 spaces on the boat, so unless I find some new friends here, then I'm going to have to pay 4x the price, which I don't really fancy doing anyway. I'd rather spend my money on other things while I'm here, if I'm honest. And by now you may be wondering why I haven't visited the most famous thing in Siem Reap, what it's known for, and also what most people's reasons to stay in the city is, to see Angkor Wat, biggest still standing temple in the world that's nearly 1,000 years old. And here you can get tickets to see it, and that includes a lot of other temples as well, so instead of trying to fit everything into this one video, my 5th day in Siem Reap, I'm going to try and see every single temple I can in the Angkor Wat complex. If that's something that interests you like it does with me, then make sure you subscribe to see my next video, which, if you haven't already figured out, will be me exploring or attempting to see every single temple I can in a one-day pass in the next video.